Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a collection of hundreds of monster ecology and strategy videos on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider backing me on Patreon and subscribing to me here as I upload at least twice a week. This week, we are looking into the unknown, the far reaches of time, space, and twisted reality. The Far Realm is not simply an alien dimension or another plane of existence like Limbo. No, it is something much weirder. It's difficult to describe because it breaks so many of the normal definitions used to describe the D&D multiverse. The Far Realm can be imagined as the edge of the multiverse, the contorted film of the bubble that contains any semblance of lore and structure. Beyond that final zone, there is some sort of non-existence, and then there are other multiverses. No mortal knows much more than that. The nature of that gap beyond is the hard limit where our minds simply cannot go. We have no frame of reference at all. You could say that as you approach a multiverse from the outside, the Far Realm is the first blurred impression. But at first, it makes no sense at all. The struggle for comprehension as something sensed becomes something with meaning is the essence of the Far Realm. It is a place of madness, of incomprehension, of substance, energy, stuff without sense and understanding. Even if it were pure chaos, this would be a definition, and therefore it would not exist in any stable and understandable way here. In the Far Realm, all is in flux, all is possible, nothing is possible. Everything is there, and nothing is there. You don't know it, it knows you. It's both a truth and a lie at the same time. If I spun stories for the next 30 minutes telling you that the multiverse is actually the demi-planes of a dream that a super powerful floating entity in a void of non-existence is having, and when it awakens the multiverse vanishes, that would be suitably terrifying, but far too logical and easy to comprehend for it to just be one reality of the Far Realm, though I assure you, it's a part of it. Here is what Jeff Grubb, Bruce Cordell, and David Noonan defined as the Far Realm for the 3rd edition Manual of the Planes in 2001. The Far Realm comprises an infinite number of layers. Unlike the layers of many outer planes, these layers are very thin, ranging from an inch to a mile in thickness, each separated from the next by about 10 feet. These layers were also transparent, and travellers can glimpse through 20 or so, with each appearing increasingly blurred. The layers are also highly morphic. On the whims of the alien entities that drift through them, the layers continually evaporate, divide, spawn, and breathe. Changes in the elemental and energy traits of the layers continuously occur, creating the Far Realm equivalent to storms. These changes can be seen far off, moving from layer to layer of reality like storms drifting across a natural world. On the Far Realm, landmarks and entities are multidimensional, existing in multiple layers at once. One could imagine the layers as a stack of translucent parchment, with a given feature appearing as a single mark upon each page. Taken individually, such marks might have no meaning, but when viewed together in the stack, they seemingly coalesce into the segments of a three-dimensional object. Although full of dark nothingness, the Far Realm is full of bizarre scenes that pass for wilderness. The translucent layers are penetrated by rivers of milky white fluid that floats freely, sometimes flowing along a layer's edge for a few feet, then pouring through it into the next layer. Strange blue globes rain down from unseen heights, bursting when they strike something and unleashing horse-sized ticks that immediately scuttle away and hunt for blood. Gelatinous worms crawl through the layers. Forests of writhing tentacled vegetation are encrusted with orange moss. Growing above an amoeba-like sea, at the very limit of sight drifts huge, multi-layer shapes, vaguely resembling creatures of the deepest ocean. But even the smallest of these beings is the size of a city. They don't even notice the lesser beings that occupy single layers, as insignificant as smudges on the wallpaper. Gravity and time do not exist in the Far Realm. The only kind of movement possible on the Far Realm is passage between the layers, which needs only a thought. The air is as viscous as syrup. Creatures can swim through it, though it's very hard. Organisms that would be microscopic residents inside a living being form whole ecosystems alongside things that would normally be the most twisted versions of creatures from coral reefs or deep swamps and jungles. The past and the present mingle as their position in time and space becomes dislocated as they traverse the wild layers of the Far Realm, gurgling, shrieking and twisting as their minds, tormented by the surrounding insanity, twist and warp their bodies, just as they warp the eldritch geometry around them by the force of their confused and terrified thoughts. consciousness. Even momentary exposure to the far realm can be devastating to a living being. As the environment takes hold, the mind looks at something as simple as the person's own hand held before their face. They no longer understand what that object is, don't know how many fingers it should have, or what a finger is. Their confused thoughts, grasping to define this thing, begin to immediately redefine what it is. Unconsciously, as the far realm recedes from them again, they are left staring in horror at the twisted, mutated, and reorganized thing they have now in place of the hand that they once knew, the pain crashing over them like waves of hot knives. This is why the far realm is so dangerous. Humanoid interaction with the far realm is invariably disastrous and highly ill-advised. But, in the lore of Dungeons & Dragons, this most certainly happened. I'll now read to you from an excellent ecology article written for Dragon Magazine number 358, published in August 2007 by James Jacobs, where we learn all about the Kaorti. The world we know is a poison to some, a canker, whose very existence is a constant irritation to something larger, more vast than anything sane mortal minds can comprehend. What we take to be order and nature is in fact an aberration, for the far realm is vast beyond all concept. It is what lies beyond the infinite of possibility. It is the infinite of impossibility, and that which dwells beyond where man was meant to travel does not react well to our timid intrusions. The far realm precedes existence, and it predates life on the material plane. In fact, life might have begun on the material plane when one of the elder evils of the far realm brushed against it, and what leaked into our world became the aboleth race. Yet, beyond the aboleths, few even guessed that there lay beyond our world a more ancient and insane realm. At some point after the collapse of the aboleth empire, the elder elves became the first mortal race to discover the far realm when, quite by accident, they created the vast gate, a portal they hoped could bridge all distance and push aside outside creation. What they discovered undid everything the elder elves strived for, and when what dwelt beyond noticed the pinhole the elves had punctured into their madness, they invaded reality. Although the vast gate was eventually closed, the link between the far realm and the material plane, a link the multiverse never intended, remained and grew. In ancient Imaska, in the Imaskari Empire of the world of Toril in the Forgotten Realms, long before Martek came to rule and yet long after the Elder Elves pierced the veils between reality and unreality, a sect of proud and elite wizards who called themselves the Quinn, after the Imaskari word for the entitled, discovered ancient tablets bearing the fragments of the Elder Elves' magic. Working from these fragments, the Quinn became obsessed with the concept of reality beyond reality and wondered what great magic might lie hidden in such a realm. Eager to be hailed for what they felt would be a great discovery, but wary about repeating the Elder Elves' mistake, they constructed a structure that would transport them to the far realm rather than bring the far realm to them. Their work was highly publicized, and as they neared the end of 10 years of toil in creating what had come to be known as the Quinn Spire, the entire nation watched expectantly, hoping the Quinn would return with fabulous resources and powers to elevate their proud nation even higher. The Quinn made bold promises and even started work on projects to finish after their return. But when the time came and the Quinn activated their tower, they simply vanished. All that remained were the tower's lowest foundation stones. Eventually, Imaska forgot the Quinn, and then Imaska itself crumbled and all was but forgotten. Yet, the doom triggered so long ago by the Quinn has only now begun. For their experiment has been a success. They arrived safely on the far realm, yet they did not remain safe for long. They had vastly underestimated the sheer hostility and alien nature of the far realm, and their tiny mote of material plane matter was like a beacon. Within minutes of their arrival, a vast and ancient entity called Zargon, one of the few whom the Aboleths know as the Elder Evils, came to investigate the disturbance. Yet so potent was Zargon's existence that its very proximity changed the Quinn and their works. They were transformed into something new, and when Zargon arrived and turned its mind to them, it found nothing to see, for nothing remained of the Quinn but their warped far realm translation that had become the first of the Kaortis. For untold eons, the Kaortis dwelt within the far realm, yet deep within their now alien minds remained a seed of memory. When their alien curiosity finally drove them to investigate this memory, they found traces of the material plane too minute for Zargon to notice, but not quite so small to escape the Kaorti's own investigations. When they used their magic to trace these fragments back to their source, they discovered what to them was a new realm, a realm so inimical to them that they could have only but one reaction, a consuming urge to overwhelm and transform it. When the Kaorti finished with our world, the far realm would be all that remains. Although the Kaorti might appear to be humanoid, they are not. The shape of their forms is little more than an accident. Just as one might be able to coax mould to grow into artificial paths, so did the presence of Zargon use the Quin's human frames as a matrix. Kaorti's resemblance to a human breaks down quickly once viewed in detail. Their bodies are painfully thin and wet with alien excretions that serve more as blood than sweat. Hands and feet are long and distended, the digits that seem connected not by rigid bone but flexible strips of resin and cartilage, allowing their fingers to bend in unnatural directions. Yet it is in the Kaorti's face where one can see the greatest echo of Zargon's alien presence, for the shiny black spheres that serve them as eyes and the bony ridges of ivory-coloured hardened resin that serve as teeth give the viewer a tiny hint of the appearance of what forged them from sane flesh. Kaortis have no need to eat or sleep, for these are diversions mortals use to replenish their bodies and minds. Rather, Kaortis exist from the outside in. A Kaorti's body is a state of constant self-consumption and replenishment, as the ooze that coats their bodies gathers unknown resources from the environment and then hardens into a shell-like but flexible skin. This shell is slowly drawn into the core by strange and hideous sucking and chewing organs, designed to cannibalize and recreate the green fluid that serves them as blood. Deep within the Kaorti's torso is a pressurized reservoir of this reeking fluid, an organ mistaken by some scholars as a heart. Tangles of arteries run along the arms and pores along the inner surface of their fingers so that they might secrete their blood as tools, the black resin for which they have become most famous. It might be easiest to think of the Kaorti's heart as a forge that transforms its outer body into the resinous building blocks of the far realm matter, stuff the Kaorti used not only to create their armour and weapons, but to build their cysts. The resin also serves as an important role for Kaorti invaders, for the material plane is poisonous to them. An unprotected Kaorti can survive only a few hours or days on the material plane before the non-resin parts of their physiology are scoured away. The first Kaortis to invade the material plane learned this weakness the hard way, and their deaths served as an object lesson for those who came later. None of them wished to repeat that most painful and torturous of deaths, as the material plane is like acid to them. On the material plane, Kaorti explorers wear chitinous bodysuits made of their resin, often sculpting horns, ridges and spikes upon their shoulders, faces and torsos to make their appearance all the more horrific. Little is known of how the Kaortis exist in the Far Realm, but on the material plane their society is brutally simple and efficient. Little interests the Kaorti other than the transformation of what was natural into what is theirs. Everything in a Kaorti-held region exists in some way to perpetuate this one driving urge. The initial group of Kaortis invading the material plane were known as the Cyst Pilgrimage. The goal of a Cyst Pilgrimage is to establish a beachhead on the material plane, to create a cyst of Kaorti's resin that blocks out the harmful effects of the material plane and gives their kin a safe fortress to stage further colonization and transformation efforts. Kaorti resin suits are costly and time-consuming to create, so typically a Cyst Pilgrimage only consists of a few Kaortis who seek out a remote or hidden area to begin their work. Pilgrimages lucky enough to have access to Squirts, or these are these minions of the Kaorti, can establish large cysts in a relatively short time, but most pilgrimages must make do with what they can secrete on their own, so it's a biological, metabolic process that has a set limit on how fast they can produce it. When a Kaorti pilgrimage is sent into the material plane, the trip is one way. There's no return portal for them to retreat if things turn sour. This is to prevent their enemies on the material plane from being able to strike at their unknown fortresses just on the other side, as much as it is to prevent the material plane from leaking into their world, because they hate it. Yet the Kaortis do not view this as a disadvantage, for their method of procreation is as swift as it is horrifying. Once a cyst is established, typically a network of cave-like tubes and chambers deep underground or in remote wildernesses, but rarely in areas close to urban regions, the Kaortis begin their harvest. Their spell-like abilities allow them to cloak themselves in illusions, allowing them to walk among humanity, where they can pick and choose their victims. Initially, they choose their victims from the dregs of society: vagabonds, prostitutes, scoundrels and street urchins, those whose vanishing won't be noted. They return to their cyst where, after 8 hours of surgery and injection of chaotic fluids, typically delivered through 8-hour bites, but sometimes through tools like wrist lancelets, their abductees become new Kaortis, immediately capable of capturing and transforming others. Left unchecked, a chaotic incursion can very rapidly become a major invasion. Kaortis take to arcane magic, especially sorcery, and many become rogues or fighters with ease. But to date, no chaotic clerics, druids, rangers, or other divine casters have been encountered. They simply cannot make the connection to the gods that the mortals worship. This is likely a psychological issue, for the Kaortis have no concept of faith in anything but themselves, and they would have contempt for any being that exists within the multiverse, even the gods. Where Kaortis are found, so too are their monstrous minions. While creatures transformed into pseudo-natural thralls are far and above the most common of Kaorti minions, they frequently create other monstrosities to serve as mounts or guardians as well, shaping and sculpting the warped flesh of several creatures at once, sometimes combining them in horrific menageries of flesh and form, using them as clay to form more powerful minions that they might be achieved by a simple chaotic transformation alone. These transformations take place in bubbling pools of raw resin deep within chaotic cysts, and generally they take several days to complete. The three most commonly created minions are the destructive insectoid Racaniers, used as living siege engines and tanks in large conflicts. These can be found in the Fiend Folio, page 144, so I'll talk about them later. They are the alien and horrific Sky Bleeders, used as mounts and magical support, also found in Fiend Folio, page 156. And the savage and ruinous Chaotic Hulks, used as shock troopers. These are found in Dragon Magazine number 330. I'll be making other videos about these sort of creatures later on. Yet not all of the monstrous minions of the Kaorti are their creations. Many are denizens of the Far Realm, brought along on their initial forays or called in through the portals deep within a chaotic cyst. These creatures, such as Farspawn, found in Lords of Madness, page 151, the amoebic crawlers, found in Dragon 330, and night steeds, found in Dragon 330 as well, are, if anything, even more alien than creatures sculpted from once normal beings, for they are wholly of the Far Realm. So these are natural creatures of the Far Realm, if there can be such a thing. Perhaps the most commonly utilised creature is the vile and foul-smelling Urquishk, an abominable miscarriage of flesh that looks like nothing more than a writhing tangle of spurting tubes, greasy entrails, and dangling arms held aloft by three long spidery legs. These horrific monsters are notable not just for their detestable shape and smell, but for the fact that when they're brought to places outside of the Far Realm, the alien cores implode, creating a tiny but mobile rift between realities back to the Far Realm. These rifts always lead to the tidal washes of the amoebic sea, providing the Urquishk with an endless supply of resin that the Kaorti can use to coat large regions, altering the environment so they can exist within the environment with relative ease. Zergoth, the feasting vast, a Far Realm is home to ancient entities of vast power, though not technically deities themselves. Their powers approach and might even eclipse the gods. They existed before divinity and will likely do so beyond the advent of the last deity's death. Respect for these entities is as close to religion as the aboleths come. Saner scholars whisper of them collectively as the Elder Evils. As with the majority of these cosmic entities, Zergoth does not dwell on the material plane. His influence is felt there, though, primarily through the actions of his accidental creation, the Kaortis. The Kaortis do not count divine spellcasters among their ilk, nor do they erect temples to Zergoth's image, yet those who escape the vile transformation of a chaotic embrace speak of memories that are not theirs, memories of drowning in a sea whose water can think, of fluids thicker than flesh that still run like mud, of vast islands heaving out of the endless bulk, only to open eyes and split open into bottomless tooth-lined throats, or mountains of parasitic creatures heaving along a landscape of shuddering mobility, too huge to be a planet and too mobile to be something dead or dying. Few who escape their chaotic transformation sleep well ever again, for many fear that when they die, It's not the afterlife that awaits them, but the infinite wet embrace of Zargon, the feasting vast. So there is a possibility that these tablets still exist somewhere in the ancient Imaskari ruins in the ancient empires. So if you look among the purple stones and things among their sort of technomancy, magic punk ruins of the Imaskari Empire, because although it was incredibly ancient, it was still around the time of the Netherall Empire, the later stages of the Netherall Empire, and so there was probably some travel back and forth between different mages across the face of Toril, and these tablets and bits of this lore may have been spread far and wide. The Netherese wizards, for example, this possibly could have been like a magical Cold War where they were stealing secrets from the Imaskari Empire. Because the Far Realm exists sort of outside the multiverse, any place that is within the multiverse is accessible to it. So the Kaorti are known to exist in all of the D&D settings, including Eberron, and may be found on the world of Ravnica even. They can show up anywhere, at any time, and my best advice is when that happens is to drop everything and run for your lives. If your characters do happen to discover one of their resin cysts, it may not be too late to make an escape, but if they were brought to that location by a disguised Kaorti, they are probably doomed. Though it's not the original Kaorti cyst, the Uber cyst is one of the oldest, largest and most powerful in existence, built in a subterranean lair within a dense forest. The cyst remains undiscovered by natives of the world, and the DMs can place this on your campaign world anywhere you want. Over the millennia, the Kaorti have had an opportunity to strike at unfortunate travellers passing through their forest. They capture these travellers and transform them into Kaorti or into their thralls. The lair is located 200 feet below ground, and the entrance to this winding tunnel that leads there is hidden behind a waterfall. The Uber cyst has spawned numerous smaller cysts over time, and since they share the same ultimate goal, they coordinate their impending attack with the offshoot groups. The denizens of the Uber cyst have never maintained a visible presence outside their lair, and they keep their attacks spread out in both location and time to avoid arousing the suspicions of those who would try to destroy them. This well-established cyst's inhabitants include 300 Kaorti, 35 monstrous thralls, 30 skybleeders, 20 Rukanyir, and 10 Thruoks, which I will detail in a moment. The Uber cyst is led by a high-level Kaorti sorcerer named Katral-Isk, cold, calculating, and utterly untrustworthy. Katral-Isk directs the Kaorti by demanding absolute loyalty and his own warped version of order. He promotes his subordinates based largely on merit, though each one has several beneath them that would portray them without a thought to gain higher standing. Once promoted, Katral-Isk not only evaluates their value to him, but he also intentionally creates power struggles to see who will rise to the top. Those few who have remained close to him through the years have done so through guile, betrayal, and a talent for survival. Of the numerous creatures created by the Kaorti, the Thruoks are most interesting. They're basically slard, so they're large aberration brutes. Remember, they resemble an enormous locust or praying mantis, bigger than a draft horse. Its body clad in thick orange scales, 2 glistening tentacles sprout from the thorax, and the monster has 2 forelimbs equipped with vicious barbs like a praying mantis, and has wings coated in sickly pink feathers but shading to red near the body. Created by the Kaorti, the Thruok is a bizarre and horrific creature. The Kaorti of the Uber cyst have created 10 of these horrific beasts that they can reproduce by using their victims' bodies to incubate their eggs. Essentially, the Thruok are full of eggs, and every time they strike an opponent with a slam attack, they can inject an egg pellet into the opponent's body. And this basically works exactly the same as the Slard egg attack, egg implantation attack, so you can use the stats for those. Otherwise, have fun making stats for that creature. It's essentially a huge monstrous thing. And that's it for me on the Kaorti. I've got a few more creatures to detail on these Far Realm invaders, and I'll get to those in later videos. Please hit the like button if you made it this far. Subscribe if you like what I do. Check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts of these videos. Buy some merchandise. Wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.